Welcome back to this series of conversations at the Dark Reading News Desk at RSA. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading. Joining me now is Tim Morgan, co-founder, CTO of DeepSurface Security. Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Terry.
We are talking about vulnerability management. It's getting a lot of headlines, both in the run-up to RSA and, of course, here at the show. Talk about some of the biggest challenges where vulnerability management is concerned.
Sure. I think there's quite a few challenges in vulnerability management, honestly. But the one that I think is probably the biggest and maybe the most underappreciated is just how important it is for security teams to be able to get the support from patching teams and the IT org in general. It may seem obvious, but in most organizations, security teams can't actually affect change. They just have to ask other teams to do that work. And I've seen the whole spectrum of companies where those teams are working really well together to companies where they're totally adversarial, and everything in between. And so, and that's really sad, right? And so it's just really important for the security team to be constantly working on that relationship, always looking for different ways to improve communication, to show the IT teams that they're on their side and they're trying to do everything they can to reduce the effort involved in patching or other activities like that. I mean, one aspect of that that's worth considering is it's hard to hire good security engineers, and it's even harder to keep them. So you don't want to be in a culture where there's a lot of friction or there's a lot of kind of tension between those teams, or for those engineers to feel like they can't actually get things done because of that. And so anyway, those are all lots of different reasons why maintaining a good relationship between those teams is important.
Sure. I want to come back to this being in sync issue in a second, but I also want to ask you about the role of risk-based prioritization in the vulnerability management realm. I guess me, like a lot of people, thought that this got solved with vulnerability scanners plus threat intelligence. That was supposed to handle this, right? Talk about the importance of this, if you would.
Sure, yeah, and that's a common perception. In general, as far as how important risk is to vulnerability management, I think it's really critical because if you aren't using risk to measure the importance of vulnerabilities, if you aren't trying to measure the risk of those things, then you're going to be working on the wrong things. You're going to be asking the IT team to work on patching things or making other fixes that don't actually move the needle on risk. So risk in general is very important. In terms of threat intelligence, that's an important aspect of the risk equation, but it's just one piece of it, right? And I kind of liken it to the internet security weather report.
Sure.
The weather's unpredictable. It's always changing. So it's helpful, but you're also going to kind of feel like you're chasing your tail. It's always something new, always something new. So there's lots of other aspects of risk that are important to consider as well that can be a little bit more reliable.
That's a good analogy. I mean, the barometer gives us data, but it doesn't exactly tell us where and when, does it?
Right, exactly.
Organizations are always looking at ways to improve the security landscape. Budgets, of course, are under pressure. Where can InfoSec professionals get the most leverage here?
Yeah, I think there's always a lot of low-cost, low-friction ways to improve an organization's security posture, whether that be just finding, and I'm not talking about buying products. I'm talking about just configuring things more securely, isolating different applications, employing zero trust in the right places. I don't think anybody can really do full zero trust these days, but at least isolating critical applications can go a long ways towards reducing risk. The problem is figuring out where to start. There's so many different things you could do that it's hard to know which of those is going to have the biggest impact, be the biggest bang for your buck.
Sure.
And so for me, it really comes down to having good visibility. And a lot of people talk about visibility, and when they talk about it, they just are really talking about inventory. Where are all my machines? Where are all my applications? That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
For me, visibility is much more about understanding how the different systems interact, how an attacker is going to view your environment once they gain a foothold, and what are all those relationships between systems? Because that's really going to tell you where the most important initiatives are going to be in your overall security architecture.
Okay. Why is it important to look beyond the CVSS score? What other data types should InfoSec professionals be considering as they perform risk assessment?
Good question. So if you're using CVSS scores alone to estimate the risk of a CVE, then that's kind of like solving the riddle, how long is a piece of string? Right? You don't have enough information. It's useful, like, there's some information there, but there's clearly such enormous gaps that you can't actually measure risk. And so for us, and actually, to the CVSS's credit, they knew this. The framework, if you look at it closely, there's a base score, there's a temporal score, and there's the environmental score. And the temporal score is somewhat addressed by threat intelligence, and nobody uses the environmental score, right? Because it's just too hard. And honestly, there's just so much complexity in trying to understand the environment that folks haven't really taken that on. So you can see from the framework itself that everyone's using the base score right now, but there are big pieces missing.
You mentioned context a few minutes ago. This is obviously an essential piece where vulnerability management is concerned. Help us understand what context means to vulnerability management teams, and what features are essential to include here.
Sure. I think when a lot of folks talk about context, they're really referring to two main areas. There's your basic configuration context. How are my applications configured? How are they deployed? What registry settings might affect the exploitability of a specific CVE, right? Those really low-level technical details that help people know what they can ignore and what they need to focus on. And that gets you, that's definitely helpful, but there's a whole nother kind of context that's relational context. It's much harder to collect and it's much harder to analyze. And it's all about how do different parts of the overall architecture interact, right? If this user gets phished, then what does it mean to my security? If this particular application gets owned, which databases does that app server have access to, right? Those kind of relationships are the things that are much harder to represent because they affect every layer of the stack. But attackers look at that and they move up and down those layers just fine. So that's the other piece that's really important to collect. And yeah, I guess I could go on at length on this, but anyway, if you want to go in more depth, I'm happy to.
No, that's helpful. Switching gears slightly, CISOs are obviously under increasing pressure from both their boards to understand both the security posture as well as the ROI risk. This has become an attention getter for boards of directors, especially since the pandemic. Talk about how CISOs can be more effective when communicating these risks to the board, speaking that language and making an impact above and beyond data sheets with a bunch of stats.
Sure, yeah. You got to take a step back and think about it from the board's perspective and from executives' perspective. For them, a security program is an upfront investment to reduce future cost, right? But the thing is that upfront investment is not just about the budget of the security program. It's also about the productivity losses that might happen throughout the organization by implementing that security program, right? So they're very sensitive to slowing down the business overall, right? So that total cost is really important. So they really want to make sure their CISOs are looking at the unique business context and the unique business, security architecture of the organization and taking that into account when they're reporting on metrics and when they're deciding what initiatives that should be undertaken, right? So anything that CISOs can do to make sure their metrics are in alignment with the business overall and do a good job of communicating that they're really, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. That's really important. It can make it a lot more effective in terms of that communication.
Thanks for that. We're partway through the RSA conference here in San Francisco this week. Curious if you've learned anything that was surprising or new or even unexpected.
Yeah, actually looking at the different talks, I was kind of surprised to see that almost a third of them are about supply chain risk. It's
Surprised?
a really big topic this year. I mean, at one level it feels like maybe we're beating a dead horse, but on the other hand, you know what, it might be a sign that our industry is finally maturing a little bit, that we're not just making the assumption that the platforms we're working on are inherently safe or trustworthy. And so I think that's kind of interesting. Other topics I've been interested in and going to talks on are things related to any kind of threat modeling and anything related to better risk metrics, how we can do a better job of measuring risk.
Great stuff, Tim. We appreciate you joining us for this Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
We've been talking with Tim Morgan of DeepSurface Security. This has been Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading. Thanks for joining us for this Dark Reading News Desk interview. We'll see you next time.